Well, you see, there is a question I often find myself returning to late at night when the world feels quiet and the sky stretches endlessly above us. What if the vastness of the universe is not merely something we measure, but something we feel? And, perhaps you have sensed it too, that gentle shiver when you hear words like light years or billions of galaxies, knowing somehow that these scales slip through the fingers of the human mind like water. I suppose it is because our brains were shaped to understand hills, rivers, the passing of seasons, not the sweeping architecture of the cosmos. And that is the thing. We stand here on this small world, drifting through a darkness so wide that even a beam of light needs ages to cross it. And yet we try, with curiosity and a kind of fragile bravery, to imagine what lies beyond. You and I, in this quiet moment, are stepping into that immensity together. From the thin blue shell of Earth's atmosphere to the great river of the Milky Way, and onward to the shimmering edge of the observable universe, each layer invites us to see differently, to breathe a little slower, to wonder why anything exists at all. And, perhaps you'll notice how the familiar dissolves gently into the unfamiliar until distance itself becomes a kind of poetry. Time is not a clock. It is a landscape we travel through. And every star you have ever seen is a memory of the universe speaking across ages. Before we go on, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. My aim here is simple, to help you drift off to sleep while exploring the wonders of science. Where are you on the map? Let me know where you are in the world and what time it is in the comments. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from all around the world. So, let's continue. Well, you see, when we begin to talk about Earth in the context of the universe, something gentle happens in the mind, a soft widening, a quiet pause. Perhaps, in this moment, you can imagine yourself holding a tiny grain of sand between your fingers. Feel how small it is, how fragile. Now imagine, that this grain is our world, drifting through a sea of darkness so immense that even the word immense seems too small for it. And that is the thing. Our Earth, the place where every memory you carry has unfolded, is far more delicate and minuscule than our instincts ever tell us. If the sun were a basketball, Earth would be nothing more than a speck of dust brushed from its surface. I suppose that sounds poetic, but it is also profoundly literal. The sun outweighs Earth to such an extraordinary degree that our entire planet becomes just a whisper of matter beside it. You and I, standing on its surface, rarely feel that imbalance. We wake, we breathe, we live our days as though the ground beneath us were the center of something. Yet all the while, we orbit a roaring sphere of nuclear fire so large that we could hide 1,000,000 Earths inside it, and still have room left for imagination to wander. And, when we talk about Earth's atmosphere, the layer of air that holds our weather, our clouds, our breath, well, it is thinner than the paint on an apple. Picture that for a moment. A small fruit resting in your palm. Imagine running your thumb across it and feeling the faint sheen of color upon its skin. That is the scale of the entire envelope that protects life. Everything we have ever known about blue skies, storms, sunsets, monsoons, breezes slipping through trees, all of that fits into a layer so slight that cosmic forces could peel it away with minimal effort. It is humbling, I suppose, to think that life depends on something so fragile, so translucent in the vast geometry of space. You know, even our oceans, which look deep and endless when we stand at the shore, become in this perspective just another thin film, a shimmering glaze of water wrapped around a rocky sphere. Sailors once believed they were crossing vast blue infinities. They were, perhaps emotionally. But physically, in the cosmic sense, the ocean is only a surface tension drop clinging to a tiny world. And yet, within that drop, entire histories of life have unfolded, from the first microbial whispers to the great migrations of whales. It makes you wonder how many stories the universe holds on other droplets floating somewhere beyond reach. Deep beneath us, almost all of Earth's mass presses inward toward its core. 99% of everything that makes this planet heavy lies far below our feet, locked in dense layers of metals and minerals. We live on the thinnest of crusts, a fragile skin that cracks and drifts slowly over molten rock. Perhaps you have felt the trembling of an earthquake or seen the aftermath of volcanic fire. These moments remind us that we are guests on a restless world, tenants residing on a shifting stage crafted by forces unimaginably old. And yet, even knowing this, we move through our days without much thought for the planet's deep interior, or for the sheer improbability of life existing comfortably on a surface so thin. And that surface, you see, is not still. Earth is not anchored, it is not resting. It is plunging through space at tens of kilometers every second. Imagine that. As you sit here now, breathing gently, listening, the world is carrying you on a cosmic trajectory so swift that no vehicle we can build comes close. And, every day, Earth sweeps millions of kilometers along its orbit around the sun. We do not feel the movement. We do not sense the velocity. But the physics remains, written into every sunrise and every shifting season. We are travelers whether we realize it or not. I suppose this is one of the quiet truths about being human. We walk on solid ground and trust in its solidity, all the while forgetting that we are riding a spaceship shaped by gravity and time. We look at the sky and see familiar constellations, never sensing that the Earth beneath us is spinning, orbiting, tilting through a cosmic dance older than history. And perhaps that is why, when we stop and truly consider the scale of it all, a kind of awe drifts in, a stillness, a reminder that life is not fixed but floating. The more we reflect on it, the stranger and more astonishing it becomes. Earth, this tiny grain of dust, is embedded in a solar system that is almost entirely empty space. But before we step outward into that next layer, into the vast distances that separate our world from its neighbors, perhaps we should linger for a moment longer on the delicate miracle of our home. It is easy to forget how improbable it is that a thin layer of gases could cradle life, or that a distant sun could provide just enough warmth without burning us away. It is easy to forget that the oceans, those shimmering skins of water, hold the memories of origins we no longer recall. It is easy to forget that we stand atop a crust floating on molten stone, all of it hurtling through the void at extraordinary speeds. And yet, despite all that fragility, Earth feels intimate to us, familiar, comforting, the only home consciousness has ever known. We press our feet into the soil and feel anchored, even though the planet is racing around the sun. We look up at the sky and sense stability, even though our world is a speck among specks. This paradox, I think, is part of what makes exploring the universe so poignant. We are small, but aware, fragile, but curious, temporary, but capable of understanding something eternal. You and I are standing at the first threshold now, the edge of Earth's scale. And you see, once we let these realizations settle, once we accept that Earth is not the center but only a tiny participant in a far greater architecture, something shifts in the way we perceive everything that follows. The distances between planets, the emptiness of space, the faint glow of faraway stars, all begin to take on new meaning. We begin to understand, slowly and quietly, why the universe feels so large, why our intuition strains to grasp it. And perhaps, as we drift forward together, you'll feel that same gentle tug of curiosity pulling us outward. For beyond Earth, beyond this little grain of sand suspended in sunlight, lies the next great revelation. The solar system is not crowded, not a neatly packed family portrait. It is spacious almost beyond imagining, a realm where light takes minutes and hours to cross the void between worlds. And so, as our thoughts lift off from this small blue sphere, carried by wonder and the soft hum of inquiry, we find ourselves already drifting toward the vastness that awaits in the next chapter. Well, you see, as we drift outward from Earth, still carrying that sense of smallness and wonder, the next thing we encounter is not another world or some bustling cosmic neighborhood. No, what greets us instead is distance itself, a quiet, immeasurable spaciousness. And that is the thing. The solar system is not a tidy arrangement of planets gently circling like dancers on a stage. It is a vast, echoing expanse where even light, the swiftest traveler we know, takes its time. Perhaps you've heard that sunlight takes a little more than 8 minutes to reach Earth. It sounds simple at first, almost mathematical. But try to feel it for a moment. Imagine a beam of light leaving the sun, freshly born from the turbulent heart of a fusion furnace, and racing across empty space. For over 8 long minutes it travels before it touches your face on a warm afternoon. 8 minutes is an eternity for light, the universal speed limit itself. You and I live in the glow of something that left its source earlier than we realize. Every sunrise is a memory. And as we travel farther outward in our thoughts, this delay grows with a kind of elegant inevitability. From the sun to the outer boundary of the solar system, light must journey not for minutes, but for days. Whole days of uninterrupted flight through emptiness. It's strange, isn't it? To think that if the sun were to vanish, the outer planets would continue circling its ghost for days before realizing what had happened. That is how large our solar system is, even before we begin to speak of galaxies. Consider Pluto, for instance, a cold and distant world whose orbit stretches deep into the solar night. Radio waves, which travel at the speed of light, need hours just to send a message there and back. Imagine asking a question and having to wait hours for a reply from a machine you built. There is something poetic in that delay, something that reminds us we are pushing against the boundaries of our own cosmic reach. Communication itself becomes stretched thin, like a whisper carried across a frozen plain. And yet, despite these staggering distances, our minds still try to picture the planets as close neighbors. We see diagrams in books, planets lined up neatly, almost touching. But you see, these illustrations lie gently for the sake of comprehension. In reality, the spaces between planets are so huge that they are mostly nothing. If Earth were a small pebble on a long field, Neptune would be another pebble far across an entire stadium. Empty seats, quiet air, nothing in between but distance. Perhaps an even more helpful picture is this. If Earth were the size of a pea lying on a grassy field, Neptune would orbit so far away that you would need an entire football field just to track its path. And out beyond that, beyond the planets we know as old companions in our solar story, lies the Kuiper Belt, a vast, icy region, more expansive than the orbits of the planets combined. It is not a thin ring, but a wide realm, home to countless frozen remnants from the early days of the solar system. This region is a reminder that the solar system does not end where our intuition suggests. It stretches into the dark like a quiet cathedral, and through it all, the most striking truth persists. The solar system is mostly empty space, breathtakingly empty. You and I, shaped by life on Earth where objects crowd every horizon, struggle to imagine such openness. Our senses were not built for cosmic scales. We see planets in diagrams pressed shoulder to shoulder because our minds need proximity to understand relationships. But reality is more dreamlike. Each planet drifts in its own vast bubble of isolation, separated from its neighbors by gulfs so large that language begins to fold under their weight. And, I suppose this is where perspective shifts again, because once you absorb the solar system's emptiness, you start to see the planets differently. They are no longer dots on a chart. They are lonely islands suspended in oceans of darkness, each carrying its own weather, its own geology, its own history of storms and formation. Jupiter with its swirling tempests, Saturn with its delicate rings, Neptune with its blue winds slicing across the cold. These worlds are not clustered siblings, but distant wanderers, each following a quiet path carved by gravity across billions of years. Even the ways we measure distance begin to feel inadequate here. Kilometers lose meaning when the numbers stretch into the millions and then the billions. So we turn to light itself as a ruler. Minutes of light, hours of light. And even then, the scale remains elusive, like trying to cup a river in your hands. Yet the beauty lies in that elusiveness. The solar system teaches us that emptiness is not nothingness. It is a vast canvas on which gravity paints slow, sweeping arcs. Perhaps the most humbling realization is that our home star, which feels so central and dominant, sits alone in this great vacuum, its gravitational pull barely holding on to its farthest companions. The sun shines in all directions, bathing the planets in warmth, but its light grows thin and weak as it travels, becoming a faint whisper by the time it reaches the edges of the solar realm. It is in these cold outskirts that the solar system reveals its true character. Not a cozy family gathering, but an empire of solitude. And you see, once we accept this, something curious happens. We begin to understand why interplanetary travel is such an extraordinary challenge. It is not simply technology that limits us, but scale itself. Rockets must push through vast distances where there is nothing to slow them and nothing to help them. Space is a desert without landmarks. A spacecraft heading toward the outer planets moves like a leaf drifting on a gentle but endless wind. Even at enormous speeds, it takes years and years to cross the solar system. But perhaps that slowness is part of the beauty. It forces us to respect the immensity of the space we inhabit. As we continue to drift outward in thought, the solar system begins to resemble more a structure of gravitational relationships than a physical collection of objects. The planets become notes in a symphony played across space, each orbit a rhythm, each revolution a beat stretching over centuries. And somewhere in this grand arrangement, Earth continues its delicate journey, carrying life through a wilderness of starlight and silence. Maybe that is why, when we stand under the night sky and look upward, we feel something subtle but profound. A tug, a question, an awareness. We sense unconsciously that the distances above us are not simply large, but fundamentally beyond the scale our lives are built to understand. And yet, we keep looking, we keep imagining, we keep reaching toward planets that appear so near to each other in photographs, but are, in truth, separated by deserts of emptiness. And, this is where the next layer of wonder begins to form. For beyond the solar system's vast stretches, beyond Neptune's cold orbit and the quiet expanse of the Kuiper Belt, lies a different kind of distance. A distance not between planets, but between stars. And well, the truth is that even the nearest star is unimaginably far away, farther than anything we have yet grasped, farther than our intuition can comfortably hold. So as we prepare to move beyond the solar system, leaving behind the planets and the familiar warmth of the sun, let us carry with us this new appreciation for distance, for emptiness, for the quiet expanse that defines our cosmic neighborhood. Ahead lies a realm even more astonishing, where space stretches so wide that light itself becomes a storyteller of ancient events. Ahead lies the journey to the nearest stars and the next chapter of our unfolding sense of place in the universe. Well, you see, as we drift beyond the outskirts of the solar system in our imagination, something subtle yet profound begins to happen. The sun, which once dominated our sky with warmth and familiarity, fades into just another star among billions. And, in that fading, a new scale reveals itself. A scale so vast that even the boldest parts of human intuition falter. We are now stepping into the realm where the nearest star, the closest beacon of light beyond our sun, sits at a distance so immense that words feel fragile when trying to hold it. You know, the nearest star system, Proxima Centauri, is a little more than 4 light-years away. 4 light-years sounds tidy, almost manageable, until you try to experience it with your mind rather than just hear it with your ears. A light-year is the distance light travels in 1 year, and light, racing at 300,000 kilometers every second, is the swiftest traveler the universe has allowed us to observe. Imagine something moving at that impossible speed, and still needing more than 4 years to reach the next star. That is not a neighborhood. That is a wilderness. And I suppose what makes this distance even more humbling is imagining our best spacecraft attempting that same journey. If we launched a modern probe today, even the fastest one humanity has ever built, it would take tens of thousands of years to reach that nearby star. Tens of thousands of human years drifting through the cold, quiet void. Civilizations would rise and fall on Earth before such a ship ever saw the faint glow of Proxima Centauri grow brighter. It is almost mythic in scale, as though the universe is gently reminding us that stars are not conveniently placed stepping stones. They are islands separated by oceans of space so deep that technology becomes a kind of wish rather than a solution. And, here is another quiet, beautiful thought. When you look up at the night sky and see a star shimmering, the light reaching your eyes in that moment began its journey long ago. For many of the stars above you, that light set out before you were born. The photons flying through the void, untouched and uninterrupted, finally meet your gaze decades, centuries, even millennia after leaving their source. Every star is a time capsule, an ancient messenger delivering news from an era long gone. And that is the thing. When we observe the cosmos, we are not seeing it as it is. We are seeing it as it was. But perhaps the most striking truth of all is that the stars we perceive as sitting close together in the sky are, in reality, separated by vast distances. The constellations that seem like tight clusters hung gently across the night are illusions crafted by our limited perspective. If you were able to step outside this view, to drift freely in three-dimensional space, you would see that each star lies tens, sometimes hundreds, of light years away from its neighbors. What looks like a dotted line is actually a three-dimensional scattering of suns, each one a lonely furnace suspended in darkness. And you see, the distances between these stars are not just large. They are fundamentally beyond the scales our senses evolved to understand. Our legs walk kilometers. Our vehicles travel hundreds. Our spacecraft may cross millions, but the space between stars stretches across trillions of kilometers. Numbers begin to break down under their own weight. They stop representing anything we can imagine and instead become symbols that point toward an immensity we must approach with humility rather than comprehension. Each star, no matter how faint or bright, is itself a blazing sun, a sphere of nuclear fire roaring silently in the void. And this is where the grandeur of the universe truly begins to take shape. For every point of light you see in the night sky is not just a star. It is a system. Many have planets, possibly dozens, some small and rocky, others swollen with gas and storms. Entire worlds circle these suns, hidden from our eyes by distance alone. Life may exist around some of them, thinking its own thoughts beneath an alien sky. But between these stars lies almost nothing at all. The interstellar medium, as we call it, is so sparse that you might find only a few atoms in the entire volume of a room. Imagine that. A space so empty that even the notion of emptiness becomes too dense to describe it. If you could somehow scoop up a cubic meter of that vast nothingness, you might find a lone particle drifting silently, waiting centuries for a collision with another. Space, in its raw form, is not crowded. It is the purest form of silence nature has ever created. And yet, despite all this emptiness, despite the distances so large they bend thought itself, we persist in our curiosity. We map the stars. We send probes. We build telescopes to capture faint whispers of light that began their journey before humans had even learned to shape tools. There is something in us, something deeply human, that leans toward the unknown. Perhaps it is because the night sky is not merely around us, but within us too. The atoms in our bodies were forged in stars like these millions and billions of years ago. When we look up, we are not observing strangers. We are gazing at our origins. You know, each star also carries a story far older and larger than we can easily hold. They were born in clouds of dust and gas, collapsing under their own weight. They ignite, burn brilliantly for millions or billions of years, and eventually fade or explode, seeding the galaxy with the raw ingredients for planets, oceans, and life. Every element in your bones, your blood, your breath was once forged in the heart of a star. In that sense, the great distances between stars are not barriers, but the spaces between the chapters of a cosmic story that continues to unfold through us. And when we examine photographs of star fields, especially images from telescopes like Hubble or Webb, the stars glimmer like grains of sand poured across velvet. But what we rarely appreciate is that most of those stars are unimaginably far apart. A picture compresses the landscape. It flattens the depth of space. It makes neighbors out of objects separated by vast deserts of emptiness. You could sail the distance between them for ages and never encounter anything but darkness. Yet that darkness, paradoxically, is what makes the light meaningful. As we move farther into this cosmic understanding, something shifts inside us. The realization dawns that the universe is not structured for our comfort. It does not arrange its beauty within arm's reach. It disperses it across distances so vast they defy storytelling. And yet, here we are, telling the story anyway. Human beings have always been drawn to mysteries too large for their size. There is something profoundly beautiful about that, a testament to our willingness to wonder even when comprehension slips away like sand between fingers. Somewhere deep in this starlit emptiness, the sun becomes just another point of light. The solar system shrinks to invisibility. Earth becomes a memory. We begin to sense, in a way that is both frightening and comforting, that the universe owes us nothing, and yet offers everything in return: vastness, mystery, and the quiet hum of existence unfolding across unimaginable scales. And it is here, in this space between stars, that the next great revelation begins to take shape. For if even the nearest star is separated from us by distances that challenge imagination, then what about the entire collection of stars that make up our home galaxy? How large must the Milky Way be for these distant suns to form just a small part of it? How does one even begin to picture a structure containing hundreds of billions of stars, each one separated by gulfs like the ones we have just crossed in thought? Well, perhaps that is where we must go next. Beyond the nearest stars, into the grand river of starlight that is our galaxy, a structure so vast that even light itself needs tens of thousands of years to cross it. So let us drift onward, carrying everything we have learned about distance and emptiness, for the Milky Way awaits, and its scale will widen our sense of wonder yet again. Well, you see, once we leave behind the lonely islands of individual stars, drifting past the quiet emptiness that stretches between them, something vast begins to rise before us. It appears first like a faint milky mist, a soft shimmering band across the darkness. But as we move closer in thought, that mist reveals itself for what it truly is: a sprawling, rotating city of stars, a structure so enormous, so layered with time and light, that even imagination hesitates at its threshold. And that is the thing. We call it the Milky Way, but the name hides its immensity. It is not a simple river of stars. It is a cosmic continent. Perhaps you've heard the numbers before. Hundreds of billions of stars, a diameter of more than 100,000 light years. Yet I suppose numbers, while impressive, rarely reach into us in the way realities do. So let us slow down and imagine what it means for anything to span 100,000 light years. Light itself, the fastest messenger in the universe, needs tens of thousands of years just to cross this one structure. Think of that. Every step of light is a story, and the Milky Way requires millennia of storytelling to reveal itself from edge to edge. And, here we are, not even near the center of it. Our solar system resides in one of the galaxy's quiet suburbs, a dim outer spiral arm called the Orion Arm. We orbit at a distance so far from the core that the night sky feels deceptively sparse. And you know, the Milky Way's bright band above us on clear nights is simply our sideways view through its disk, like peering through the length of a vast cosmic forest from within the trees. Each glowing point is a star. Each soft cloud is not a cloud at all, but billions of suns too distant for us to distinguish individually. A single photograph of that band might seem peaceful, but in truth, it is the condensed glow of ancient power scattered across time. The galaxy's center, though, is something else entirely. A dense, radiant region where stars crowd together in ways impossible near our quiet corner. And within that luminous heart lies a massive black hole, millions of times the mass of our sun. Perhaps that sounds frightening, but in many ways it is simply the anchor around which our galaxy organizes itself. This black hole is not a ravenous monster in the way stories might suggest. Instead, it is a silent, gravitational conductor directing the slow, majestic dance of stars that orbit around it. It has been here for billions of years, shaping the Milky Way with its invisible pull. And yet, even with this colossal anchor, the galaxy's rotation remains astonishingly slow from a human perspective. Imagine this. Our solar system takes more than 200 million years to complete a single orbit around the galaxy's center. 200 million years. That is older than the dinosaurs. Older than most continents in their present form. If you tried to mark your place on this galactic path, you would find humanity has existed for only the tiniest fraction of a single rotation. Every step of our history, every breath you have ever taken, has unfolded within a journey so long that we have not even completed one single loop. You see, when we gaze upward at the Milky Way, what we witness is not just beauty. It is an archive of ages. Some of the light we see left its sources before Earth had oceans. Some departed before our sun existed. Every glance upward is a conversation with the deep past. And because of that, every point of light becomes a reminder that the universe is not young and not in a hurry. It grows, changes, evolves at a pace we barely perceive. Perhaps that is why the stars inspire both humility and comfort. They are patient where we are hurried, eternal where we are brief. And, let us consider the sheer density of stars within this galaxy. When we picture the Milky Way from outside, perhaps from the artistic renderings astronomers often create, we see sweeping spiral arms glowing with countless suns. But in reality, if you placed yourself in almost any region of the galaxy, the distances between stars would still be astounding. They are not nestled shoulder to shoulder like city lights. They are isolated lanterns scattered across a dark plain, each separated from the next by vast tracts of emptiness. Yet collectively, when viewed from afar, something magnificent emerges. Light accumulates. Patterns form. Entire structures reveal themselves at scales the human mind was not designed to comprehend. And still, our place in this structure feels strangely intimate. We are inhabitants of one tiny system, orbiting quietly among billions. Nothing about our position is special. We are not near the center, not part of any remarkable cluster, not situated in a privileged zone of creation. And yet, from this ordinary location, consciousness has arisen. From this unremarkable corner of a spiral arm, a species has emerged that can look up and wonder why. Perhaps the universe hides a quiet message in this fact. That significance is not given by location, but by awareness. You know, the edges of the Milky Way do not look like edges in any familiar sense. There is no border fence, no fading line. Instead, the density of stars simply thins gradually into the dark, the same way a forest fades into scattered trees and then open land. But make no mistake, the scale remains enormous. Even near the edges, the galaxy stretches across thousands of light years. It is not a disk in the conventional sense. It is a layered structure with thickness and depth, like a luminous cosmic whirlpool surrounded by a faint halo of ancient stars. And this halo contains some of the oldest stars in the galaxy. They orbit not in neat, flat paths like the stars of the spiral arms, but in loose, elliptical swarms. These stars are relics of the Milky Way's earliest days, remnants of a time when galaxies collided and merged billions of years ago. Their light is faint, but their stories are profound. They are the elders of our cosmic family. Yet despite all this grandeur, you and I see only a fraction of it from Earth. When we look at the Milky Way in the sky, we are seeing the densest slice of the disk, not the full splendor of the galaxy. Most of the stars lie in directions we cannot observe easily, hidden behind dust, gas, or simply too faint for our eyes. It is as though we live inside a vast cathedral, but can only glimpse a tiny portion of its architecture by candlelight. And still, the beauty is overwhelming. Perhaps, then, it is no surprise that the Milky Way has inspired myths across cultures. Humans have always sensed its significance, even without technology to explain it. They saw in it the pathway of spirits, the breath of gods, the seam of the sky. And in a way, they were right. It is a kind of pathway, a highway of stars stretching across the vast canvas of space, guiding our thoughts outward toward the unknown. But as vast as the Milky Way is, as breathtaking as its hundreds of billions of stars may be, there is an even more humbling truth waiting quietly in the background. Our galaxy is not alone. Far from it. It is just one among trillions in the observable universe, a single luminous leaf in a cosmic forest so immense that its scale makes even the Milky Way feel small. And you see, once we've allowed ourselves to feel the true immensity of our home galaxy, we are finally ready to ask the next question. If the Milky Way is so large, then what does it mean that it is only one of countless galaxies scattered across the universe? How do they move? How do they interact? What oceans of space lie between them? Well, perhaps that is where our journey must drift next, beyond the swirling arms of our galaxy into the intergalactic dark, where entire galaxies glide like islands of light floating through a cosmic sea. For the Milky Way, magnificent as it is only the beginning of the larger story waiting out there. Well, you see, once we drift beyond the luminous spiral arms of the Milky Way, something extraordinary begins to dawn on us. The galaxy that once felt impossibly vast now starts to resemble a single pearl in a boundless cosmic ocean. And, perhaps this is one of the most humbling transitions in our entire journey. We move from thinking of the Milky Way as the grand structure to realizing it is merely one of countless others scattered across the universe. That is the thing. A galaxy, with its hundreds of billions of stars, its swirling dust lanes and ancient clusters, turns out to be nothing more than a grain of cosmic sand. And you know, when astronomers say there are trillions of galaxies, they are not exaggerating for awe. They are describing a reality so abundant that it becomes difficult for the human mind to keep hold of its own sense of scale. Imagine, perhaps, standing on a beach. Scoop up a handful of sand. In that moment, every grain slipping between your fingers could represent an entire galaxy. A galaxy with stars, planets, nebulae, black holes, histories of formation and collapse. A galaxy with its own quiet symphony of gravity unfolding over billions of years. And now, imagine not just a handful of sand, but the entire beach, the entire coastline, the entire world. That is how the universe distributes its galaxies. Each galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars, vast clusters, spiraling arms, or elliptical glows. Some are small, quiet dwarfs. Others are magnificent giants, stretching millions of light years from edge to edge. They drift, not in isolation, but in great patterns, like luminous islands moving slowly across the cosmic sea. And, what is even more remarkable is that these galaxies are not pressed together or arranged neatly. They are separated from one another by distances measured in millions of light years. Millions. The space between galaxies is so immense that even the vastness of the Milky Way appears intimate by comparison. And yet, despite these distances, galaxies are not static statues frozen in place. They move. They orbit within clusters. They approach and recede. They weave paths through the expanding fabric of space. When we observe deep field images taken by telescopes like Hubble or Webb, we see not stars but galaxies, thousands of them, sprinkled across a patch of sky no larger than a grain of rice held at arm's length. Each point of light is not a single star, but an entire cosmic city. One small photograph can contain more galaxies than all the stars visible to the naked eye from Earth. And that, I suppose, is where the scale begins to slip out of our grasp again. Some galaxies are like delicate rivers of light, their spiral arms sweeping outward in graceful arcs. Others are massive elliptical clouds, featureless and old, filled with ancient stars burning low. Still others collide and merge in spectacular cosmic events. You see, galaxy collisions are not rare. They are part of the natural evolution of the universe. Perhaps that is surprising. We imagine collisions as destructive, chaotic events, but when two galaxies meet, most of their stars pass right through each other because the space between stars is so vast. These interactions reshape galaxies, pulling their arms into tides of stardust, igniting bursts of star formation, and sometimes feeding their central black holes. And, even our own Milky Way is not exempt from this cosmic choreography. It is currently on a slow-motion collision course with the Andromeda Galaxy, a magnificent neighbor 2.5 million light-years away. Someday, billions of years from now, the two will merge, forming a new galaxy entirely. Perhaps our descendants, if they still exist then, will gaze upward and witness a sky ablaze with intertwined streams of stars. The universe is not static. It is a living, breathing tapestry of gravitational interactions. What fascinates me most, is the sheer size some galaxies can reach. While the Milky Way spans about 100,000 light-years, some galaxies stretch across millions of light-years. Imagine that. Millions of years for a beam of light to traverse from one side to the other. Entire civilizations could rise and fall before a single photon completes that journey. And still, on the cosmic stage, such galaxies remain but single structures among trillions. If we return our gaze to those deep field images, we begin to appreciate something subtle but profound. The universe is not only vast, it is dense with structure. A tiny square of sky, observed long enough, reveals thousands of galaxies layered across billions of years of cosmic history. Some appear as faint smudges of red, their light stretched by the expansion of space. Others appear sharp and brilliant, close enough that their shapes can be discerned. Each one is a chapter of cosmic time, a fossil of the universe's past. And in a way, the further we look, the younger the universe becomes. For each distant galaxy is a snapshot of ancient reality, arriving only now after a journey of billions of years. The galaxies themselves move through space like slow rivers of starlight. They drift, pulled by gravitational tides, shaped by invisible filaments of dark matter, shepherded into clusters and superclusters. Their motions are not random, but part of a grand cosmic architecture. Some fall inward toward massive neighbors, others recede as space expands, and in this gentle dance, tremendous forces unfold silently over unimaginable timescales. And I suppose this is where our sense of scale is tested once again. For even though galaxies are separated by millions of light-years, the universe contains so many of them that they form patterns and structures spanning hundreds of millions of light-years. But that thought belongs to the next part of our journey. For now, we remain with the galaxies themselves, letting their abundance settle into our imagination. You see, when we zoom out far enough, the Milky Way shrinks into a single dot among billions. The universe becomes a vast mosaic of luminous islands, and we begin to understand that our galaxy, magnificent as it is, does not define the universe. It participates in it. It contributes its light to the cosmic sea, just as every other galaxy does. Perhaps this is where a quiet sense of humility arises. We often think of our home as unique, our galaxy as special, but the universe gently reminds us that it is filled with wonders of equal or greater scale. Entire realms of stars, dust, gas, and cosmic history unfold far beyond our reach. And yet, through our telescopes and our questions, we glimpse them. We touch the edges of understanding. And what is even more extraordinary is that galaxies rarely exist alone. They gather into groups and clusters, drawn together by gravity, weaving themselves into larger structures. The Milky Way, for instance, belongs to a small group called the Local Group, dominated by the Milky Way and Andromeda, surrounded by numerous dwarf galaxies, but even this is only the beginning. For beyond these groups lie immense clusters, and beyond clusters lie superclusters stretching across hundreds of millions of light years. These structures form the cosmic web, the universe's grand design, a network of filaments and voids so large that galaxies become mere pixels. And perhaps you feel it too, this subtle shift. We have moved from planets to stars, from stars to galaxies, and now from galaxies to something even greater. The space between galaxies is immense, but the connections between them trace out a pattern that spans the entire observable universe. So, before we drift onward into that next realm, into the vast emptiness that separates galaxies and the delicate structures connecting them, perhaps take a moment to breathe in the scale of what we've already uncovered. The Milky Way, once our whole universe, now sits as a single glowing grain of sand on an infinite cosmic shore. Ahead lies the intergalactic darkness, a place where space becomes so empty and yet so fundamentally important that it shapes the universe itself. And so, let us continue, drifting gently from the realm of galaxies into the great quiet spaces that lie between them, where the universe reveals yet another layer of its astonishing architecture. Well, you see, as we let go of the great luminous islands of galaxies and drift outward into the spaces between them, the universe undergoes another quiet transformation. The lights that once felt countless begin to thin. The shimmering clusters recede into the background. And, something deeper and more difficult to grasp emerges. Emptiness. Not the kind of emptiness we experience on Earth. Not silence in a room or a desert at night, but a vastness so hollow, so profoundly sparse, that even words like empty or void feel too cluttered to describe it. And that is the thing. Most of the universe is not made of stars or galaxies at all. It is made of space, unimaginably large volumes of almost nothing. When we look at photographs of the cosmos, the galaxies appear close together, floating side by side like glowing jewels. But these images deceive us gently because the distances between galaxies are measured in millions of light years. Imagine a stretch of darkness so wide that even a beam of light, rushing at the ultimate cosmic speed, needs millions of years to cross it. If you set off today at the speed of light, you would still be traveling through darkness long after humanity had changed beyond recognition, long after continents had shifted, long after even our languages had dissolved into something new. The universe invites us to imagine timescales far beyond our own breath and heartbeat. And, what fills these spaces between galaxies is not truly empty, though we call it a vacuum. It is incredibly, astonishingly sparse. In large regions of intergalactic space, you might find just a single atom floating in an entire cubic meter. Think about that. A whole meter of volume and perhaps one lonely hydrogen atom roaming through it. On Earth, air contains trillions upon trillions of molecules in every breath you take. But here, in the great voids, matter becomes a rare visitor. It is almost poetic, this cosmic solitude. Yet this near-nothingness is not insignificant. It is the stage upon which galaxies drift, the silent ocean that carries entire clusters through the cosmos. And you see, despite its thinness, this space is shaped by invisible forces. Gravity, subtle and patient, stretches across these enormous distances, weaving galaxies into vast structures like beads on invisible threads. When astronomers map the distribution of galaxies on the largest scales, they discover something astonishing. The universe resembles a cosmic web, a gigantic lattice of filaments and voids stretching across billions of light years. These filaments, made of countless galaxies, trace out the threads of this web, while the voids between them span hundreds of millions of light years across. And perhaps it is here that awe shifts into something quieter, but deeper. because the emptiness between galaxies is not pointless space. It is the underlying architecture of the universe. Without these voids, without these expanses of near nothing, the galaxies would not cluster, the filaments would not form, and the cosmic web would not emerge. The emptiness shapes the fullness. The sheer size of these intergalactic spaces also challenges our intuition. Even within a single cluster of galaxies, the distances between individual galaxies are staggering. And when you step outside the cluster entirely, into the great voids between clusters, the scale becomes almost unreadable. These voids are some of the largest structures in existence, yet they contain almost no matter. They are cosmic deserts, so deep and so dark that a photon entering them might travel for hundreds of millions of years before encountering anything at all. And, imagine for a moment drifting through one of these voids. No stars, no nebulae, no dust lanes glowing faintly in starlight. You would be surrounded by a darkness so complete that your mind would begin searching desperately for a reference point, but none would exist. Even the nearest galaxy would appear only as a faint smudge, a distant whisper of light. In such a place, you would truly understand the meaning of cosmic isolation. And yet, within that silence, something profound stirs. You begin to sense how miraculous it is that galaxies, stars, planets, and life exist at all. Perhaps that is why astronomers say space is mostly nothing. But this nothingness is not empty in a spiritual sense. It is the canvas upon which everything meaningful is painted. The galaxies that thread along the filaments of the cosmic web move through this vast medium as though floating in rivers of invisible matter. They drift because the universe itself is stretching. Gravity gathers them, expands them, reshapes them across billions of years. And even though space seems empty, it is filled with this subtle warp and flow, like currents in a cosmic sea. You see, galaxies do not simply sit in space. They travel through it, pulled by the gravity of unseen structures, guided by dark matter, pushed apart by the expansion of the universe. And I suppose one of the most surprising truths is that the space between galaxies is where the universe becomes most transparent. Light travels through these voids almost untouched. It does not scatter, does not dim from dust, does not become confused by magnetic fields or cosmic fog. It simply glides for billions of years, carrying ancient memories from the early universe. When we observe distant galaxies, we see them as they were long before our sun existed. That light has traversed these voids faithfully, delivering its story across unimaginable distances. This transparency is why the universe reveals its past so clearly to us. Across the intergalactic voids, light becomes a messenger of time. Every distant galaxy we observe is a glimpse into history. The farther away it is, the earlier we are seeing it. The universe becomes an archive written in light. And, the emptiness between galaxies also reminds us of how little the universe cares for our intuitive sense of closeness. On Earth, objects appear grouped because our world is dense with matter. But out here, the nearest galaxy might be millions of light years away. And yet, in an image, it sits just millimeters from another. Our diagrams flatten distances. Our eyes cannot grasp the depth. The real universe is far more spacious than anything we can draw. Still, despite all this emptiness, there is an undeniable beauty in the structural patterns that emerge. Gravity forms galaxy clusters, and these clusters gather to form superclusters. These superclusters occupy the filaments of the cosmic web, leaving vast voids between them. And the filaments themselves span hundreds of millions of light years. The scale becomes almost meditative. We are witnessing the architecture of the cosmos on its grandest stage. And perhaps, in this emptiness, there is a lesson about perspective. Our worries, our fears, our small everyday concerns seem so dense and heavy when we carry them inside ourselves. But compared to the great voids of the universe, they become light, diffuse, almost weightless. The universe teaches us humility by its scale, but also serenity by its silence. You know, as we drift through this intergalactic space in thought, we may feel that nothing exists here. But this nothingness is the connective tissue of the cosmos. It is the quiet backdrop that makes every galaxy meaningful. Without the voids, the structure collapses. Without the silence, the music has no stage. And so, after spending time in these great dark regions, something curious begins to happen. Our attention slowly shifts again. If the space between individual galaxies is already so vast, what happens when galaxies gather into clusters? How large must the structures be that contain not one galaxy but hundreds or thousands? What patterns emerge when we zoom out even farther, beyond the loneliness of the voids, into the great congregations of galaxies? Well, I suppose that is where our journey naturally leads next, out of the darkness between galaxies and into the immense structures they form together. Ahead lies the realm of galaxy clusters and superclusters, the cosmic cities and continents of the universe. And as we move toward them, the quiet emptiness behind us begins to reveal how essential it was, how it set the stage for the grandeur yet to come. Well, you see, as we drift out of the great intergalactic voids and allow our vision to widen even further, something remarkable begins to take shape in the darkness. The galaxies that once felt like solitary islands no longer appear alone. Instead, they gather, quietly and inevitably, into families. You might think of them as communities of light, bound together not by choice, but by the soft, patient pull of gravity. And, the moment we recognize this, the universe seems to deepen again. It reveals another layer, another structure hidden beneath the vast emptiness we have just crossed. This is where galaxies, those immense, swirling realms of stars, begin to cluster into cosmic cities. And that is the thing. Galaxies rarely drift entirely alone. They fall into collections called clusters, places where dozens, hundreds, even thousands of galaxies gather. Imagine standing on the edge of one of these clusters, watching as luminous giants glide through space like drifting embers, each one with billions of stars moving in delicate gravitational orbits. A galaxy cluster is not a quiet place. It is dynamic, full of interactions, mergers, and gravitational tides. The energy radiating from these clusters can be enormous. They are, in many ways, the bustling metropolitan centers of the cosmos. But perhaps what is even more astonishing is that clusters themselves do not mark the end of this structural hierarchy. They combine to form superclusters, immense continental masses of galaxies stretching across hundreds of millions of light years. The scale becomes difficult to hold in the mind. A single supercluster, made of countless clusters, each containing countless galaxies, each containing countless stars. It is like watching infinities nested within infinities, each level expanding the one beneath it. And you know, among these colossal structures is one we call the Laniakea supercluster, the region of the universe to which our own Milky Way belongs. Laniakea spans more than 500 million light-years, a gravitational basin so vast that galaxies flow through it like water down the slopes of an unseen valley. And, within this supercluster are hundreds of thousands of galaxies, each one a world of stars and planets and cosmic history, drifting together across the expanding fabric of space. When you begin to sense the immensity of Laniakea, something shifts inside you. Our home galaxy, earlier so majestic, now seems like a tiny eddy in a great cosmic river. Even our entire local group of galaxies becomes just one droplet among thousands in this sprawling structure. It humbles the imagination, but it also inspires a strange, comforting thought. We are part of something vastly larger than we can ever fully comprehend. Not the center of it, not privileged in any way, but woven into the flow. And, if we could somehow step back, far enough, wide enough, to see Laniakea in its entirety, we would witness threads of galaxies stretching out in enormous filaments. These filaments are the highways of the cosmic web, the places where matter concentrates. and between them lie the immense voids we explored earlier, dark and nearly empty. The universe at this scale begins to look like a living structure, a network, a web, as though gravity, over billions of years, has spun a pattern that resembles the branching of rivers or the strands of neurons inside a brain. Perhaps this is why so many people feel a strange sense of recognition when they see maps of the cosmic web. It is not that the universe mirrors us, but that both follow the same mathematics of connection. And yet, within this magnificent pattern, there is no true center. The universe does not pivot around any special point. There is no cosmic throne, no axis, no preferred direction. Every location is as valid as any other. This is one of the quiet truths that science whispers to us. The universe is not arranged for us. It does not rise or fall around Earth or the Milky Way or even Laniakea. We are not at the edge, nor at the middle. We simply are, occupying one small coordinate in an unimaginable expanse. It is a revelation both humbling and liberating. The universe does not revolve around us, and yet, somehow, we get to be here, observing it. You know, when you follow this thread of thought, something else becomes clear. These enormous structures, clusters, superclusters, filaments, are not static sculptures. They evolve over time. They form, stretch, merge, and drift apart. Gravity gathers them into knots, while the expansion of space slowly pulls them toward isolation. Over billions of years, superclusters shift in shape like slow-moving clouds. And all the while, galaxies within them continue their own internal dances, birthing new stars, extinguishing old ones, merging with neighbors, unraveling into streams of starlight. Perhaps, as we move through this cosmic hierarchy, you begin to sense how our place in the universe grows increasingly small. But paradoxically, I think this smallness brings a kind of peace. After all, being small in a universe like this does not diminish us. It situates us. It allows us to feel connected to something incomparable, something vast that exceeds every boundary of experience. And, once we accept our smallness within Laniakea, we also realize that even this magnificent supercluster is just one among many. The observable universe contains countless superclusters, all woven into the grand architecture of the cosmic web. Laniakea is not the universe's capital or its beginning. It is simply one tile in a mosaic so immense that our minds can only graze the edges of comprehension. But this mosaic is more than structure. It is history. The positions of clusters, the sizes of voids, the patterns of filaments, all are the frozen imprints of ancient cosmic processes. To study them is to study the early universe. To map them is to map time. You see, the universe arranges itself according to deep physical principles, but the patterns that emerge feel almost poetic. Entire clusters drifting like galaxies of galaxies, superclusters stretching across 500 million light years, and all of it held together by gravity, dark matter, and the quiet persistence of cosmic evolution. And perhaps you notice as we journey farther outward in scale that the structures keep growing, the distances keep expanding, the universe keeps offering one more level beyond the last, as if inviting us to keep climbing the ladder of wonder, from planets to stars, from stars to galaxies, from galaxies to clusters, from clusters to superclusters. It is as though the cosmos is gently leading us toward a question that becomes impossible to ignore. If superclusters are this large, if they trace the cosmic web across hundreds of millions of light years, then how far does this structure stretch? How wide is the universe we inhabit? What lies beyond the edges we can currently observe? Well, you see, that question carries us naturally forward. For beyond the superclusters, beyond Laniakea and all its luminous threads, lies the scale of the observable universe itself. A realm so vast that even light, traveling since the dawn of time, has not yet crossed it entirely. Ahead is a horizon, set not by imagination, but by physics. And so, let us drift onward, beyond the superclusters, toward the edge of what we can see and what we can infer. The observable universe awaits, and with it, the next profound layer of our growing understanding. Well, you see, once we step beyond the grand architecture of superclusters, once the filaments of the cosmic web begin to fade into the darkness, we arrive at a threshold that feels almost mythic in scale. It is here, at this extraordinary distance, that the concept of the observable universe takes shape. And, perhaps this term sounds technical, almost clinical, but the reality behind it is one of the most profound ideas we've ever uncovered. The observable universe is not the universe itself. It is simply the portion we can see, the bubble of space from which light has had enough time to reach us since the beginning of cosmic time. And that is the thing. The boundary is not a wall. It is a horizon made of time. You know, the radius of this observable cosmos extends more than 45 billion light-years in every direction. That means the sphere we inhabit, the bubble of visibility centered on Earth, spans over 90 billion light-years across. It is vast beyond words, yet still only a slice of a far greater whole. What we see is limited not by distance, but by the age of the universe itself. Light has been traveling toward us since the earliest moments after the Big Bang, but even traveling at its relentless speed, it can reach us only from so far away. And beyond that horizon lie regions we cannot yet perceive, regions that may be larger, stranger, or more numerous than anything within our current field of view. And perhaps the most poetic part is that when we look into deep space, we are not merely looking outward, we are looking backward in time. Every distant galaxy is not just a faraway object, it is a snapshot of ancient history. The light that reaches us now may have begun its journey billions of years ago, at a time when Earth had not yet formed, when the Milky Way was still young, when the first stars were only beginning to ignite. You see, the universe carries its memories in light, and the deeper we gaze into the darkness, the younger the cosmos becomes. And, consider the oldest light of all, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. It comes to us from a time when the universe was only about 380,000 years old, a newborn compared to its current age. Before that time, the universe was opaque, a hot plasma of charged particles through which light could not travel. But when atoms finally formed, the cosmos became transparent, and light from that moment has been streaming across space ever since. Today, we detect it as the cosmic microwave background, a faint whisper of ancient fire. It is the most distant thing we can see, not because there is nothing beyond it, but because beyond it lies a time before visibility. When we observe galaxies near the edge of the observable universe, we see them not as they are now, but as they were billions of years ago. Many of them appear small, clumpy, irregular, still forming, still assembling themselves under gravity's patient guidance. The universe is showing us its youth, its early experiments in structure, its first attempts at weaving stars into galaxies. These distant galaxies are fossils of a time long vanished, and their light is the bridge between then and now. And, the shape of the observable universe is spherical from our point of view, but it is spherical from any point of view. Every observer, anywhere in the cosmos, sees themselves at the center of their own observable bubble, not because they are central in any cosmic sense, but because light radiates toward them from all directions. It is a quiet reminder that the universe does not privilege any location. What we call edges are simply horizons created by time. And perhaps this is where the mind begins to stretch again. The edge of our vision, the limit of what we can see, is not the limit of existence. Beyond the observable universe lie regions forever beyond our reach. Space has expanded so rapidly that the light emitted from some distant galaxies will never reach us, even if we wait for eternity. These regions continue to drift outward faster than light can bridge the distance, not because they are breaking any cosmic rules, but because space itself expands, carrying them away on its swelling tide. You see, the observable universe is like a small illuminated island in a vast and endless sea. The darkness beyond is not emptiness. It is simply unconnected to us. Perhaps there are more galaxies beyond that horizon, more clusters, more cosmic webs stretching into regions we can only imagine. The true universe may be vastly larger than the part we can observe, perhaps infinite, perhaps layered in ways we cannot yet understand. And, even within the observable universe, the diversity of galaxies is astonishing. Some are so distant that their light has been stretched or redshifted into wavelengths we can detect only with sensitive instruments. These galaxies appear reddish, faint, almost ghost-like, yet they hold secrets about the universe's earliest days. Each one is a piece of the cosmic story, a clue about how matter organized itself from chaos into structure. And I suppose there is something deeply moving in the realization that our understanding of cosmic distance is built entirely from the journeys of ancient photons. Light is the historian of the universe. It brings us stories from before humanity existed, before Earth existed, before even our galaxy took shape. And because light travels at a finite speed, distance and time become inseparable. To look far is to look back. But here is a quiet truth. Everything we see, every galaxy, every cluster, every filament of the cosmic web, exists within just a small fraction of the total universe. Our observable horizon is a limit imposed not by the structure of space, but by the limits of time. As the universe ages, the horizon expands. Future generations may see farther than we can today, not because their telescopes will be better, though they may, but because the light from more distant regions will finally have had time to arrive. And yet, the expansion of the universe complicates this picture. Some regions recede from us faster than light due to the stretching of space. Their messages will never reach us. This cosmic event horizon ensures that parts of the universe remain permanently hidden, no matter how long we wait. It is humbling to know that most of the universe is beyond reach, beyond knowledge, beyond even observation. But perhaps that is what makes the part we can see so precious. You know, when we contemplate the observable universe, we encounter a strange blend of vastness and fragility. On one hand, the scale is nearly unimaginable. On the other, it is bounded by the simplest of things, the speed of light and the age of cosmic time. The horizon is not a boundary of space, but a boundary of memory. And as we let these thoughts settle, something else begins to rise in the mind. If the observable universe is all we can see, and yet the universe itself is likely much larger, or even infinite, then what governs its shape, its stretching, its evolution? Why do distant galaxies appear to race away from us? Why does space itself expand? What hidden force drives the acceleration of this expansion, pushing galaxies beyond our view? Well, I suppose that is where our journey must drift next, beyond the horizon of what we can observe, into the deeper mystery of why the universe grows ever larger. Ahead lies the story of expansion, of space stretching, of galaxies fleeing, of a cosmos that refuses to remain still. And in that story, the scale of the universe will widen once more, as we explore the forces that cause even light itself to fall behind. Well, you see, once we step beyond the grand architecture of superclusters, once the filaments of the cosmic web begin to fade into the darkness, we arrive at a threshold that feels almost mythic in scale. It is here at this extraordinary distance that the concept of the observable universe takes shape. And, perhaps this term sounds technical, almost clinical, but the reality behind it is one of the most profound ideas we've ever uncovered. The observable universe is not the universe itself. It is simply the portion we can see, the bubble of space from which light has had enough time to reach us since the beginning of cosmic time. And that is the thing. The boundary is not a wall. It is a horizon made of time. You know, the radius of this observable cosmos extends more than 45 billion light years in every direction. That means the sphere we inhabit, the bubble of visibility centered on Earth, spans over 90 billion light years across. It is vast beyond words, yet still only a slice of a far greater whole. What we see is limited not by distance, but by the age of the universe itself. Light has been traveling toward us since the earliest moments after the Big Bang, but even traveling at its relentless speed, it can reach us only from so far away. And beyond that horizon lie regions we cannot yet perceive, regions that may be larger, stranger, or more numerous than anything within our current field of view. And perhaps the most poetic part is that when we look into deep space, we are not merely looking outward, we are looking backward in time. Every distant galaxy is not just a faraway object, it is a snapshot of ancient history. The light that reaches us now may have begun its journey billions of years ago, at a time when Earth had not yet formed, when the Milky Way was still young, when the first stars were only beginning to ignite. You see, the universe carries its memories in light, and the deeper we gaze into the darkness, the younger the cosmos becomes. And consider the oldest light of all, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. It comes to us from a time when the universe was only about 380,000 years old, a newborn compared to its current age. Before that time, the universe was opaque, a hot plasma of charged particles through which light could not travel. But when atoms finally formed, the cosmos became transparent, and light from that moment has been streaming across space ever since. Today, we detect it as the cosmic microwave background, a faint whisper of ancient fire. It is the most distant thing we can see, not because there is nothing beyond it, but because beyond it lies a time before visibility. When we observe galaxies near the edge of the observable universe, we see them not as they are now, but as they were billions of years ago. Many of them appear small, clumpy, irregular, still forming, still assembling themselves under gravity's patient guidance. The universe is showing us its youth, its early experiments in structure, its first attempts at weaving stars into galaxies. These distant galaxies are fossils of a time long vanished, and their light is the bridge between then and now. And the shape of the observable universe is spherical from our point of view, but it is spherical from any point of view. Every observer, anywhere in the cosmos, sees themselves at the center of their own observable bubble, not because they are central in any cosmic sense, but because light radiates toward them from all directions. It is a quiet reminder that the universe does not privilege any location. What we call edges are simply horizons created by time, and perhaps this is where the mind begins to stretch again. The edge of our vision, the limit of what we can see, is not the limit of existence. Beyond the observable universe lie regions forever beyond our reach. Space has expanded so rapidly that the light emitted from some distant galaxies will never reach us, even if we wait for eternity. These regions continue to drift outward faster than light can bridge the distance, not because they are breaking any cosmic rules, but because space itself expands, carrying them away on its swelling tide. You see, the observable universe is like a small illuminated island in a vast and endless sea. The darkness beyond is not emptiness. It is simply unconnected to us. Perhaps there are more galaxies beyond that horizon, more clusters, more cosmic webs stretching into regions we can only imagine. The true universe may be vastly larger than the part we can observe, perhaps infinite, perhaps layered in ways we cannot yet understand. And even within the observable universe, the diversity of galaxies is astonishing. Some are so distant that their light has been stretched or redshifted into wavelengths we can detect only with sensitive instruments. These galaxies appear reddish, faint, almost ghost-like. Yet they hold secrets about the universe's earliest days. Each one is a piece of the cosmic story, a clue about how matter organized itself from chaos into structure. And I suppose there is something deeply moving in the realization that our understanding of cosmic distance is built entirely from the journeys of ancient photons. Light is the historian of the universe. It brings us stories from before humanity existed, before Earth existed, before even our galaxy took shape. And because light travels at a finite speed, distance and time become inseparable. To look far is to look back. But here is a quiet truth. Everything we see, every galaxy, every cluster, every filament of the cosmic web, exists within just a small fraction of the total universe. Our observable horizon is a limit imposed not by the structure of space, but by the limits of time. As the universe ages, the horizon expands. Future generations may see farther than we can today, not because their telescopes will be better, though they may, but because the light from more distant regions will finally have had time to arrive. And yet, the expansion of the universe complicates this picture. Some regions recede from us faster than light due to the stretching of space. Their messages will never reach us. This cosmic event horizon ensures that parts of the universe remain permanently hidden, no matter how long we wait. It is humbling to know that most of the universe is beyond reach, beyond knowledge, beyond even observation. But perhaps that is what makes the part we can see so precious. You know, when we contemplate the observable universe, we encounter a strange blend of vastness and fragility. On one hand, the scale is nearly unimaginable. On the other, it is bounded by the simplest of things, the speed of light and the age of cosmic time. The horizon is not a boundary of space, but a boundary of memory. And as we let these thoughts settle, something else begins to rise in the mind. If the observable universe is all we can see, and yet the universe itself is likely much larger, or even infinite, then what governs its shape, its stretching, its evolution? Why do distant galaxies appear to race away from us? Why does space itself expand? What hidden force drives the acceleration of this expansion, pushing galaxies beyond our view? Well, I suppose that is where our journey must drift next, beyond the horizon of what we can observe, into the deeper mystery of why the universe grows ever larger. Ahead lies the story of expansion, of space stretching, of galaxies fleeing, of a cosmos that refuses to remain still. And in that story, the scale of the universe will widen once more as we explore the forces that cause even light itself to fall behind. Well, you see, as we drift from the edge of the observable universe into the deeper question of why that edge exists at all, the universe begins to reveal a truth so strange, so counterintuitive, that it changes the way we think about reality itself. Up until now, we have been traveling outward, expanding our sense of scale from planets to stars, from galaxies to superclusters. But now the scale itself, the fabric of space, begins to shift under our feet. And, this is where the notion of an expanding universe steps quietly into view, carrying with it a profound and humbling revelation. Space is not static. It grows. And that is the thing. When we imagine the aftermath of the Big Bang, we often picture an explosion, something like a fireball hurling matter outward into emptiness. But the universe is far stranger than that simple picture. There was no empty space for matter to expand into. Space itself expanded. The universe didn't explode in space. Space exploded with the universe. Every point moved away from every other point, not because it was pushed, but because the fabric connecting them stretched. You know, it's tempting to imagine that galaxies are flying apart like shards of debris after a great blast. But galaxies are not really moving through space in that sense. Instead, the space between galaxies is increasing. The distance grows even when the galaxies themselves remain still. Like dots drawn on a balloon that expands, their separation increases not because the dots wander, but because the surface itself stretches. And, the balloon analogy is simple, but it hints at something profound. Space is dynamic, flexible, alive with possibility. And here is where the universe becomes even more surprising. The farther away a galaxy is, the faster it appears to recede from us. That's because more space lies between us and that distant galaxy, and all that space is expanding. A galaxy twice as far away does not just look twice as faint, it appears to move away twice as fast. This relationship, known as Hubble's law, is one of the most beautiful and intuitive laws in cosmology, Once you allow yourself to feel it rather than calculate it, space expands uniformly, and the effect accumulates with distance. But perhaps the most astonishing part is this. Some galaxies are receding from us faster than the speed of light. And you see, that may sound like a violation of physics, but it isn't. Nothing is breaking the cosmic speed limit because the galaxies themselves are not moving faster than light. Instead, the space between us and them is stretching so quickly that they slip beyond the reach of their own photons. Light they emit today will never reach us. They are not merely out of sight. They are out of connection. And I suppose there is something quietly heartbreaking in that thought. Entire galaxies drift beyond our horizon, not because they cease to exist, but because the universe expands too quickly for their light to keep up. They fade not into darkness, but into unreachable history. The observable universe shrinks in relevance not because it becomes smaller, but because more and more of the universe slips beyond the cosmic event horizon. Yet this expansion is not uniform across all scales. Gravity still binds things tightly, stars to galaxies, galaxies to clusters, clusters to the filaments of the cosmic web. You and I are not being stretched apart. The molecules in your body remain bound. The Earth and the Sun remain in their orbit. The Milky Way holds itself together. The expansion of the universe is a large-scale phenomenon. It unfolds across intergalactic spaces where gravity weakens and space has room to breathe. And, when we look out at the galaxies receding from us, we are not watching them flee in fear or rush away with momentum. We are watching space itself swell. And the expansion is not slowing. It is accelerating. Something we still do not fully understand, is pushing galaxies apart faster and faster. We call it dark energy, but the name is more a confession of ignorance than an explanation. Dark energy might be a property of space itself, an intrinsic tendency for the universe to expand. It may be something temporary, something ancient, something eternal, or something entirely beyond our current imagination. And you know, the acceleration leads to a strange future. The galaxies gravitationally bound to us, like Andromeda, will eventually merge with the Milky Way. But the rest of the universe will drift ever farther away. Over billions of years, the night sky will empty. Galaxies will disappear over the cosmic horizon until only our local structures remain visible. The universe will grow quieter, lonelier. The grand cosmic web that now stretches across billions of light years will dissolve from view, not because it vanishes, but because we lose the ability to see it. Perhaps there is a kind of melancholy in that, but also a deep, resonant beauty. It reminds us that our moment in cosmic history, this moment in which the universe is rich with visible galaxies, is temporary. We exist in a time when the cosmos still speaks to us in light. We live in a window of visibility that future beings may never have. The universe reveals its story now, in this era, as though inviting us to listen before the curtain of expansion draws across the stage. And yet, despite the expansion, despite the speed of distant galaxies, despite the accelerating separation, the memory of the Big Bang remains frozen in the light that surrounds us. The cosmic microwave background carries within it the imprint of the early universe. It whispers to us, the universe was once smaller, denser, hotter, and even now as it stretches, it retains the patterns of that beginning. The expansion does not erase the past, it stretches the past outward. And, there is something philosophically soothing in recognizing that expansion is not merely an outward movement, it is the unfolding of time itself. Space and time are linked. As the universe expands, time progresses. As time progresses, more space comes into being. The distinction between the growth of space and the flow of time begins to blur. Perhaps, in a sense, the expansion of the universe is time made visible. But if the universe expands, if galaxies recede and space grows, then what does that mean for the geometry of the cosmos? Is it flat, curved, infinite, finite? Does the expansion continue forever, or slow, or reverse? These questions rest at the edge of cosmology, at the boundary where physics meets mystery. And you see, this is where our journey naturally turns toward the next revelation. For if space expands, if distances evolve over time, if light carries ancient memories across a changing cosmos, then time must itself be understood not as a simple flow, but as a dimension intricately woven into the fabric of space. Which brings us to a deeper question. What is time? Why does looking farther into space reveal earlier eras? Why does gravity bend not only space, but time itself? And how can something as familiar as time become curved, stretched, and slowed? Well, perhaps the universe is inviting us to look closer. For in the next chapter, we will discover that time is not merely something we experience. It is something we inhabit, a dimension as real as length and width, bending and shaping the cosmos around us. Well, you see, once we've felt the universe stretching beneath our feet, once we've watched galaxies drift away on the tide of expanding space, a new kind of question begins to whisper at the edges of our understanding. If distance is not fixed, if space itself grows and bends, then what of time? What is it that we are truly moving through when we gaze into the deep past? And perhaps you felt this instinctively, that strange sensation when you look up at the night sky and realize you are not seeing stars as they are, but as they were. Time becomes woven into everything we observe, everything we measure, everything we imagine. And that is the thing. Time is not simply a clock ticking in the background. It is a dimension as real, as malleable, as mysterious as space. You know, when we look far across the cosmos, we are looking back through time. A galaxy 1 billion light years away shows us light that departed 1 billion years ago. A galaxy 10 billion light years away reveals the universe as it appeared when it was young and filled with raw, turbulent energies. In this way, the cosmos becomes a layered archive, each layer revealing an earlier chapter. We do not just see distance, we see history. And, as strange as it sounds, the universe is not only vast, it is old, and that age is visible. And it becomes even stranger. Light does not just carry images of the past, it carries time itself. When a photon travels for billions of years across the expanding universe, it stretches, losing energy, becoming longer in wavelength. What we detect is not just light, but the aging of light, time etched into its very nature. To look outward is to look backward, and to look backward is to watch time unwind. But time is not absolute. Einstein showed us that time flows differently depending on your speed. If you travel quickly, very quickly, time slows down for you relative to someone at rest. And this isn't just theory, we've measured it. Astronauts on the International Space Station, orbiting Earth at tremendous speed, age slightly more slowly than we do on the ground. The effect is tiny but real. If we could accelerate to near the speed of light, the effect would become profound. Minutes for one traveler could be decades for another. In such a universe, time is elastic, sensitive, alive. And then there is gravity. You see, gravity does more than pull objects toward one another. It bends the shape of time. The stronger the gravitational field, the slower time flows. A clock placed near a massive object ticks more slowly than one placed far away. This means that time is not uniform. It drapes itself over mass like fabric, stretching and sagging, flowing gently or sluggishly depending on the cosmic landscape. Stand near a black hole, and your seconds become the slowest seconds in the universe. Drift far from all matter, and time runs more freely. Perhaps you've heard the saying that time flies when we're having fun. But in physics, time truly flies in empty regions of space. It lingers near mass, sinks toward gravity wells, curves around stars and galaxies. Space and time are not separate. They entwine. They form a single entity, space-time. And within this four-dimensional fabric, everything, planets, stars, galaxies, even light, moves along paths shaped by the curvature of the whole. When Earth orbits the Sun, it is not being pulled in a classical sense. It follows the straightest path through curved space-time. We are all travelers in a landscape we cannot touch but continuously inhabit. And, here's where the universe feels almost philosophical. If space-time is a single structure, then past, present, and future may exist together in a way our minds struggle to comprehend. Our perception of time flowing from moment to moment might be a consequence of consciousness, not of physics. The universe, in its totality, may be a static four-dimensional tapestry. We do not move through time. We reveal it slice by slice, like flipping through the pages of a cosmic book. Perhaps that feels unsettling, but maybe it's also comforting. In some sense, nothing is ever lost. Every moment in the universe exists as part of the whole, a frame preserved within the fabric of space-time. The birth of stars, the first oceans on Earth, the evolution of life, all are etched into the structure of reality. But for all this elegance, time remains deeply mysterious. We can measure how it bends and slows, but we still do not know why it flows. Why is there a direction to time? Why does the universe move from past to future, and not the other way around? Why does entropy increase, filling the universe with disorder? These questions sit at the frontier of physics, hinting at deeper truths waiting to be uncovered. And then comes the most personal thought of all. Time, for humans, is the container of our lives. It holds our memories, our futures, our hopes. Yet in the cosmic sense, it becomes something fluid and immense. Our entire existence is a flicker in the timeline of the universe, just a brief shimmer in the long arc from the Big Bang to whatever lies ahead. And, rather than diminishing us, that realization can be strangely freeing. It invites us to see our worries as ripples on the surface of a deeper ocean. If time bends, stretches, and slows, if it is woven together with space, then what does it mean for the universe as a whole? How does space-time shape the structures we observe at the grandest scales? If time is a dimension, then distances measured in years become not just distances but ages. Stars become clocks. Galaxies become fossil records. Light becomes the keeper of ancient truth. And that is where our journey naturally leads next. If we have learned that kilometers and miles cannot capture the universe and that time itself becomes a dimension of space, then perhaps the next step is to confront the limits of what the human mind can truly grasp. There are scales out there, years of light, billions of years, trillions even, that stretch beyond intuition. So let us drift onward, gently, toward the chapter where the very act of measuring the cosmos becomes a challenge. Ahead lies a realm of magnitudes so overwhelming that no drawing, no model, no metaphor can fully capture it. The chapter where numbers themselves begin to tremble under the weight of the universe's true size. Well, you see, once we accept that time itself bends and stretches, that light is a courier of ancient stories, and that space-time forms a four-dimensional tapestry we merely drift through, something else begins to dawn on us. A quieter, more unsettling truth. The universe is not simply large, it is beyond large. It occupies scales of distance and duration that leave our familiar units, kilometers, miles, even the span of a human lifetime, utterly inadequate. And, this is where the mind begins to tremble a little, not in fear, but in awe. Because the deeper we peer into the cosmos, the more our tools of understanding fall away. Numbers melt, diagrams collapse, metaphors become strained. And that is the thing. The true dimensions of the universe cannot be drawn, not accurately, not fully, not even approximately. They can only be approached with humility. Kilometers stop being useful almost immediately when we try to describe cosmic distances. They are too small, too numerous, too easily lost in their own enormity. A light year becomes our new ruler. But even that, 1 year of travel at light speed, only begins to scratch the surface. 1 billion light years, 1 trillion light years. These phrases sound impressive, but they remain abstractions. They hover in the space between comprehension and imagination. And the truth is, even a trillion light years is modest compared to the large-scale structure of what may exist beyond our observable horizon. And perhaps this is where we confront the limits of our biology. Our brains evolved to navigate forests, rivers, the passing of days and seasons, not the deep voids between galaxies, not the silence of interstellar space, not the vastness of a universe expanding into realms beyond sight. We're built for survival, not for cosmic geometry. So when we try to imagine distances that stretch beyond a few thousand kilometers, we rely on metaphors, on images, on analogies. And even those fail eventually. The universe is too large to be pictured, too old to be narrated, too complex to be held in the mind all at once. Numbers lose meaning here. 1 billion light years and 100 billion light years evoke the same emotional response, something like stunned disbelief. They feel identical because they both exceed the scale of understanding. It is like comparing two oceans when you have lived your life beside a single river. They are both beyond you. The differences feel academic. And diagrams? Well, every diagram of the universe is wrong. Not intentionally, just inevitably. To draw a galaxy next to another galaxy, to place stars on a page, to draw light cones or cosmic filaments, all these require distortions. We compress millions of light years into inches. We collapse dimensionality. We flatten what should curve. We simplify what is fundamentally unsimplifiable. And still we try, because trying helps us take that first step toward wonder. But I suppose the shock comes when you realize that even our best images, the most precise maps, the deepest photographs, the grandest simulations, capture only the faintest approximation of reality. The true scale remains outside our grasp. When we say the observable universe is more than 90 billion light years across, the mind processes the number but not the meaning. 90 billion light years. It becomes a symbol rather than a measurement, a placeholder for something too vast to hold. Even the term light year, elegant as it is, becomes comically insufficient when we push it to its extremes. A light year describes distance only because we have no better tool. But when we talk about billions of light years, we are describing a universe whose size challenges not just language but logic. We rely on scientific notation, on exponents, on abstractions because there is no intuitive human experience to compare these distances to. No metaphor from everyday life can scale up that far. And, this is where science itself embraces a kind of philosophical humility. Cosmologists know that their models, equations, and simulations are representations, approximations, beautiful, powerful, deeply predictive, but still incomplete. The universe does not fit neatly inside a textbook or a lecture. It spills out over the edges, overflowing our conceptual boundaries. Even time, measured in billions of years, becomes slippery. 1 million years feels ancient. 1 billion years feels mythic, almost fictional. But the universe has endured for more than 13 billion years. What does that truly mean? How do you imagine 13 billion years of cosmic history unfolding, moment by moment? You don't. You can't. The mind treats it as a metaphor rather than a duration. And this brings us to a profound realization. Perhaps the reason we rely on mathematics to describe the universe is because language collapses under the weight of its scale. Math stretches farther than intuition. It reaches where imagination falters. It allows us to predict the behavior of galaxies without needing to see their full enormity. But even mathematics has limits because the map is never the territory. The equation is never the thing itself. When we look at those breathtaking images of galaxies or nebulae, we forget that the colors are often symbolic, the scales compressed, the distances flattened. They are not lies. They are translations. Interpretations crafted so the human mind can hold, even briefly, something far beyond its natural scale. Astronomy is, in a way, the art of translating the ungraspable into the almost graspable. And still, the real universe remains so much larger, so much older, so much stranger. I suppose this is where humility enters most strongly. We realize that no matter how advanced our models become, no matter how deep our telescopes peer, we will never fully comprehend the true scale of reality. We are creatures of limited perception, trying to understand something fundamentally unlimited. Yet this limitation does not diminish us. It elevates the universe. It gives us a reason to wonder, a reason to keep asking questions. And perhaps the greatest gift of nature is that it allows us to understand even a fraction of its enormity, that we, tiny beings on a small planet around an ordinary star, can conceive of galaxies, superclusters, cosmic webs, and space-time, that we can imagine the early universe, that we can describe the curvature of time, that we can sense our own limits and still choose to explore beyond them. But this growing awareness leads us toward one final layer. If the universe is so vast that no drawing can capture it, and so old that no intuition can hold it, then where does humanity fit within it? What is our place in this immense structure? Why does consciousness arise in a universe so large and indifferent? Are we insignificant, or are we somehow an essential part of this unfolding story? Well, you see, those questions pull us gently toward the final chapter, for after traveling through the scales of planets, stars, galaxies, clusters, and the universe itself, we must finally turn back toward ourselves, toward the small, fragile beings who dare to imagine all of this, toward the quiet mystery of human consciousness within a cosmic setting. And in that reflection, perhaps we will discover that even though we are small, we are not trivial. Well, you see, after wandering through the immeasurable distances of the cosmos, after watching galaxies drift on expanding space and feeling time itself bend beneath gravity's touch, a quiet question inevitably rises within us. Where in all of this do we belong? What does it mean for human beings, small, finite, fragile, to exist inside a universe that stretches across tens of billions of light years and millions of centuries? And perhaps you felt it too, that subtle trembling of perspective when you realize how tiny our world really is. A small planet, circling an ordinary star, tucked away in a quiet suburb of a galaxy that is itself just one among uncountable trillions. And that is the thing. The universe does not shrink to meet us. We must stretch our understanding to meet it. You know, when we look at Earth from this cosmic vantage, everything familiar becomes delicate. Every story we've ever told, every civilization that has risen and fallen, every memory, every dream, all of them have unfolded on a pale sphere suspended in darkness. We live on a world that is neither at the center of anything, nor especially remarkable in size or position. Our solar system, too, drifts not in the heart of the Milky Way, but near one of its quiet arms, far from the crowded brilliance of the galactic core. If the Milky Way were a great city of stars, we would be out in the dim suburbs where space is wide and the lights grow sparse. And the galaxy itself, this magnificent spiral of hundreds of billions of suns, turns out to be just one of countless galaxies scattered throughout the observable universe. Nothing in the cosmic structure singles us out. There is no cosmic arrow pointing to our location as special. No grand design centers around our world, and perhaps that realization stirs something in us, not fear, but humility. The universe is grand beyond measure, yet it unfolds without placing any particular emphasis on the place we happen to occupy. But here is where the story begins to turn, quietly, astonishingly. Though we are small, though we stand nowhere special in the geography of the cosmos, there is something undeniably remarkable about us: consciousness, awareness, the ability to turn our gaze outward and ask, what is all of this? Why does it exist? How do we fit into it? You see, stars shine, planets orbit, galaxies swirl, but as far as we know, only living beings look back. Only we stand at the edge of the ocean of space and feel wonder rising within us like a tide. And you know, there is something poetic in the fact that the atoms in our bodies were forged in the hearts of ancient stars. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the carbon that shapes your thoughts. All of it was born in nuclear furnaces long before Earth existed. We are, quite literally, the universe arranged in a way that allows it to contemplate itself. I suppose that is why so many physicists and philosophers have echoed the same sentiment. We are the universe becoming aware. And, when you think about it that way, our smallness does not diminish us. It connects us. We belong to the same story as galaxies and nebulae, as quasars and supernovae. We are woven from the same cosmic fabric. Without us, the universe would still be magnificent, but it would not be observed. It would not be known. In a very real sense, consciousness adds a layer of meaning to the cosmos, an inner dimension wrapped around the outer immensity. Still, the contrast remains striking. We are temporary. Our lifetimes are brief flashes against cosmic time. The universe has expanded for more than 13 billion years, and it will continue long after the last star burns out. And yet, within this brief window, we have managed to uncover truths that stretch across the whole of existence. From our tiny world, using fragile senses and ingenious tools, we have measured the age of the cosmos, mapped the motion of galaxies, traced the remnants of the Big Bang, and charted the structure of space-time itself. Perhaps that is one of humanity's quiet triumphs. We reach far beyond our physical scale. You see, the universe does not revolve around Earth, but Earth contains beings who can imagine the universe. We are cosmic bystanders, yes, but also cosmic witnesses. We are small, but we are aware. And there is something deeply moving about that combination. Awareness transforms smallness into significance. It turns isolation into wonder. It turns distance into curiosity. And, perhaps it is precisely because we are insignificant in size that our significance in meaning becomes so powerful. We do not command galaxies. We do not move stars. We simply look, and in looking we create relationship. A universe with no observers is a universe with no questions. But questions give shape to understanding, and understanding gives shape to experience. When we face the immense scale of the universe, we often feel dwarfed, even overwhelmed. But if we shift the perspective slightly, something beautiful emerges. We are not outside the universe, peering in. We are of it. We arise from the same forces, shaped by the same laws. The cosmos is not foreign territory. It is home, in the deepest possible sense. Every atom in our bodies has traveled unfathomable journeys across cosmic time to become part of us. And because of that, when we look outward, there is a sense of recognition. You know, some say humanity is a cosmic accident, a fleeting moment in an indifferent universe. Others say consciousness is a fundamental expression of matter, destined to arise wherever conditions allow. But whatever the truth may be, the fact remains. Here we are, aware of our own existence in a universe vast beyond comprehension. In that awareness, something sacred flickers, a sense of belonging, not because we are large or central or powerful, but because we are alive in a universe that permits life. And perhaps that is why, even though we are travelers passing briefly through cosmic time, our presence holds meaning. We remember, we imagine, we wonder, we care. We tell stories about the stars. We look into the night sky and feel something shift within us, a mixture of longing and serenity, curiosity and calm. And in that moment, the universe becomes not just a place, but an experience. And, after everything we've explored, the planets, the stars, the galaxies, the immense scales and impossible distances, we arrive at a simple but profound realization. The universe is vast, but the human mind is capable of embracing that vastness in thought. And that ability, that reach of imagination, is itself extraordinary. But there is still one last turn in this journey, one final perspective to settle into. For after seeing the universe laid out across unimaginable distances, and after locating ourselves in its structure, we must finally return inward and ask, What does all this mean for our lives? How does understanding the scale of the cosmos reshape the way we move through our days, our joys, our worries? Well, I suppose the answer calls us gently forward. For now that we know where we are in the vast architecture of existence, the final step is to understand what that knowledge offers us, how it settles our anxieties, softens our fears, and opens a space for peace. And perhaps in that final reflection, we will discover what it truly means to be human in a universe as grand as this. Well, you see, once we've traced our place in the grand architecture of the cosmos, after drifting from Earth's fragile surface into the abyss of galaxies and beyond, there is a natural question that unfolds softly, like a whisper rising inside the quiet mind. Now that we know how small we are, how ancient the universe is, how vast its distances and how gentle our significance, what do we do with that knowledge? How does a human life, brief and tender, coexist with a universe that will outlive mountains, continents, civilizations, even the stars themselves? And, perhaps, this is where the journey turns inward in a way it never truly has before. We have been moving outward, ever outward, but the scale of the cosmos eventually becomes a mirror reflecting our inner world. You know, understanding our smallness does not shrink us. It enriches us. It shows us that our fears, the ones we carry day to day, the anxieties about the future, the regrets about the past, are tiny ripples compared to the cosmic sea. And somehow, paradoxically, this makes them easier to bear. When we place our worries beside galaxies measuring hundreds of thousands of light years, beside voids spanning millions of light years, beside a universe that has expanded for more than 13 billion years, our stresses become lighter, gentler, almost transparent. They are no less real, but they lose their ability to overwhelm. And that is the thing. The universe doesn't erase our problems. It puts them into perspective. And, perhaps that perspective is exactly what the human heart has always needed. We spend so much time looking inward, tangled in thoughts and expectations, caught in the loops of daily life. But when we look outward, truly outward, something loosens inside us. The universe invites us to breathe differently, more slowly, more generously. It says, you are a tiny part of something enormous, but that does not make you insignificant. It makes you connected. You know, when we realize that Earth is just one planet among billions, orbiting an average star, in a galaxy that is itself just a speck in an immeasurable cosmos, there is a moment of stillness, a moment in which we recognize that our existence is not central, not guaranteed, not staged for us. And yet, here we are, living, feeling, thinking. There is something miraculous in that, something worth cherishing. The universe may not revolve around us, but the fact that we have the capacity to appreciate it, to marvel at it, feels like an extraordinary gift. And this awareness can soften our relationship with time as well. We spend so much of our lives caught between the past and the future, anticipating, regretting, yearning. But out there in the cosmic expanse, time stretches into billions of years. Stars are born and die, galaxies collide, space expands, and our brief moment becomes precious precisely because it is brief. The brevity of human life gives it intensity, meaning, urgency. The universe teaches us that we do not have to be eternal to matter. You see, when we think about consciousness, this strange, luminous phenomenon that allows the universe to know itself, we begin to sense that human beings hold a unique place, not at the center of space, but at the center of experience. The universe is silent without beings who can hear. It is dark without beings who can perceive light. It is vast without beings who can imagine distance. Through us, the universe becomes aware. Through our curiosity, it evolves beyond physics into understanding. Through our wonder, it becomes intimate. And perhaps this is why, despite our smallness, humanity feels special, not chosen, not privileged, just beautifully improbable. We are the outcome of ancient stars living and dying, of matter gathering, of planets cooling, of chemistry learning to dream. And once you see yourself as a continuation of cosmic history rather than a separate observer, solitude fades. You begin to feel a quiet belonging, a sense that your existence, however brief, is woven into the universe's story. But of course, belonging does not mean permanence. One day the sun will fade. One day the galaxies beyond our cosmic neighborhood will drift out of sight. One day even the stars will exhaust their fuel, and humanity, if we endure long enough, will witness these changes or become part of the cosmic silence. But you know, that is not a tragedy. It is simply the arc of existence. Everything transforms. Everything flows. The universe is not a static sculpture, but an unfolding poem. And from this cosmic perspective, something remarkable happens. Compassion becomes easier. When you recognize that every human being shares this tiny, fragile world drifting through space, it becomes harder to cling to divisions, harder to hold on to bitterness, harder to believe that borders or pride or conflict could ever outweigh the astonishing fact that we are here at all. We are all made of the same ancient atoms, all living within the same cosmic breath. The universe invites us to see ourselves as travelers, sharing a brief moment together on a small blue platform. And you see, once we absorb this truth, once we allow it to settle quietly into our thoughts, we begin to carry life differently. We savor more. We fear less. We find meaning not by trying to enlarge our importance, but by recognizing our connection to everything around us. We feel gratitude simply for being alive in this moment, in this universe, capable of feeling awe. And perhaps this is where our journey, which began with scales and distances, transforms into something softer, something almost spiritual. Not in the religious sense, but in the sense that the universe touches something deep in us, something that longs to understand its own origins. When we know our place in the cosmos, we also begin to know ourselves. Our values shift, our priorities soften. The noise of daily life becomes just that, a noise, not the defining story. But I suppose there is another layer still waiting for us. If the universe is vast and we are small, and yet we carry the ability to think about all of this, to feel moved by it, what does that say about the nature of scale itself? Why does the contrast between our size and the size of the cosmos evoke wonder rather than despair? Why does smallness feel beautiful instead of threatening? Well, you see, that question draws us gently toward the final reflection. After traveling across the true scale of the universe, after feeling both our insignificance and our connection, the last step is to understand how this knowledge settles into peace. For scale is not the universe's way of belittling us. It is its way of inviting us to let go of fear, of ego, of urgency, and rest in the quiet truth that we are part of something vast, ancient, and astonishing. And so, perhaps the next chapter leads us there, into the calm that arises when the cosmos becomes not a place of terror, but a source of perspective, a reminder that we are small, yes, but wonderfully, meaningfully small. Well, you see, after wandering so far across the vast architecture of the universe, after drifting past planets and stars, through galaxies and superclusters, beyond horizons of space and even horizons of thought, we find ourselves returning, gently, to a quieter place. Not a place in the cosmos, but a place within ourselves. And perhaps you feel it too, this soft settling of perspective, like dust drifting in a beam of ancient starlight. Because now, at the end of this long journey, the cosmos is no longer something out there. It has become something we feel. You know, when we began, the universe seemed enormous in a distant sort of way, a vastness we acknowledged but didn't truly grasp. Light years were just numbers. Billions of galaxies were abstractions. Time felt anchored to clocks rather than stretched across the bones of space-time. But now, after traveling layer by layer from Earth's fragile surface to the edges of the observable universe, something inside us has changed. The scale that once overwhelmed now humbles. The distance that once frightened now soothes. And the silence between galaxies, once imagined as cold and indifferent, now feels like a kind of cosmic calm, a quiet reminder that not all emptiness is loneliness. And that is the thing. When you step back far enough, everything softens. The noise of daily life, the arguments, the deadlines, the worries, begins to feel smaller, lighter, easier to carry. Not because those things are unimportant, but because they're no longer the entire sky. They are small storms in a much wider atmosphere. And, recognizing that can be deeply comforting. We are part of something so vast that our anxieties seem to dissolve at its edges. But the strange beauty is that our smallness does not erase our meaning. If anything, it deepens it. The cosmos is not asking us to be large. It is inviting us to be aware, to marvel, to notice, to live. Every moment of consciousness we experience, every breath, every connection, every memory is a rare phenomenon in a universe where most of what exists cannot feel, cannot think, cannot wonder. You and I are rare in that sense. Perhaps one day we will discover other intelligences, other forms of awareness scattered across the galaxies. But for now, the fact that we know the universe exists gives us a role no less profound than any star or galaxy. You see, stars burn, galaxies rotate, clusters drift. But humanity remembers, questions, imagines. We create meaning inside a cosmos that does not demand it. And that is remarkable. It makes our small world, the only world we have ever known, feel precious. A fragile sphere glowing softly in the dark, carrying life in all its tenderness. And once you truly grasp the vastness of everything beyond us, something curious happens. Instead of feeling lost, you feel found. Instead of feeling insignificant, you feel connected. Every atom in your body was forged in the heart of a star. Every breath you take participates in a chain of cosmic history, stretching back more than 13 billion years. When you place your hand on your chest and feel your heartbeat, you're feeling the rhythm of a universe that learned to pulse. And, perhaps that is why the universe inspires both awe and peace. It reminds us that we are temporary, but also that everything is temporary. It reminds us that we are small, but also that everything begins small. It reminds us that nothing lasts forever, but also that forever is too vast a scale to worry about. The universe invites us to live with humility, but also with gratitude. You see, we often imagine the cosmos as this grand, untouchable realm of stars and equations. But when you sit quietly and let the scales sink in, the universe becomes intimate. It becomes a companion rather than a distant spectacle. Its vastness is not meant to intimidate us. It is meant to give us room to think, to feel, to grow, to breathe. And in that breathing space, we begin to see our lives differently. The little joys suddenly matter more. The little sorrows matter less. The love we feel for others becomes a kind of gravity, holding us in place when the world feels unstable. Kindness becomes a cosmic act. Curiosity becomes a tribute to the stars that made us. And wonder becomes the quiet thread connecting everything. And I suppose that is why, after exploring the true scale of the universe, we often feel calmer. Not because we understand everything, but because we understand enough. Enough to know that life is rare. Enough to know that time is precious. Enough to know that even though the universe does not revolve around us, we still have a part to play. We are not the center of the universe, but we are the center of our own brief universe of experience. And that is worth honoring. there is a gentle peace that comes with recognizing your place in the cosmos. A peace that says, you are small, yes, but you are here, right now, in this era of starlight, and that is enough. The universe does not ask for perfection. It simply offers itself as a backdrop for our lives, a reminder that beauty exists at every scale, from the drifting of galaxies to the quiet beating of a human heart. And, in that realization, a door opens. A door not to more facts or more data, but to a kind of cosmic gratitude. A gratitude for being alive in a universe that produces light. A gratitude for consciousness. A gratitude for the chance to look up at the night sky and feel something move inside us. And maybe that is the true gift of understanding scale. Not fear, not insignificance, but peace. Yet even in this peace, a soft question lingers. One more thread we have not tugged at yet. If the universe is so vast and we are so small, and yet we can feel wonder rising within us like a tide, then what is wonder itself? Why does the cosmos awaken something deep and luminous in the human spirit? Why does looking outward teach us something inward? Well, you see, that question invites us gently toward whatever comes next, toward the next exploration, the next layer of reflection, the next story the universe might offer. For the cosmos is not finished, and neither are we.